G'day, 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 and welcome back to the Yucky Outback, Australian Death Guard tactics from the plague-ridden side of the tabletop. I'm your host, the Strategist, and today we're asking the big question: can anything actually stop this ShambleRot list? We're breaking it down for the Yucky Outback Nation, what makes this list work, which units carry the pressure here, and why this slow green nightmare might be the real problem on the tabletop. Because we don't move fast, but we do move with inevitability. Everyone, you know what time it is. Let's get yucky. So by the end of this video, you're going to know exactly the ins and outs of ShambleRot itself. You're also going to know how to build your own list that you're going to be comfortable with playing this attachment. You're going to know the primary rules of how to play this to a successful win rate. You're also going to know how to run this competitively, and you're also going to know how to play this in a smooth transition into 11th. Alright, you rotten poxwalkers, let's go over the verdict of today's video. So today, we're going to be looking at the competitive value for the detachment, the best roles for the detachment, the main weaknesses we're going to come across, and out of all of our new videos that we're going to be putting out, we're going to rate the detachment from 1 to 10 in value of competitiveness. So the competitive value. I think competitively, the detachment is actually solid and good. I think that in overwhelming the board and also having a lot of great enhancements available to us for Poxwalkers, it's a different style of play than Death Guards, not usually bringing up front to a competitive scene, so it will catch people off guard for not having too many reps into it. The best role for this detachment in particular is pretty much jailing your opponent and overswarming the board with enough pressure to be able to keep doing actions with priority assets, as I believe that priority assets is the best way to get the most usable and versatility with the list. The main weakness that is going to be something that we're going to have to overcome is we are in a meta right now where we're going to be punished for bringing a lot of infantry due to flamers and a lot of anti-infantry dev wounds with other armies, because seeing things like custodies, space marines, things like that on the top right now from the competitive meta, it's kind of playing into their hands a little bit, but it's not all lost because we are playing a swarm army, so we can still overwhelm those armies to a certain extent, but we have to play smart. We'll come back to the final score in a little bit. I want to get everything covered before I give my final result, and we'll go through the ins and outs of the detachment entirety to make sure that you guys are fully prepared with how to play this detachment. And let's start with the best place, the detachment rule. In your command phase, in each of your specified battle rounds, you add a 10 model unit of Poxwalkers to your army placed in strategic reserves. The rounds you do this on depend on the game size you're playing. 2 and 3 are for incursions, 2, 3, and 4 are for strike force, and 2 through to 5 for onslaught. Now, why is this good? Well, we get to add another layer of defense. We get to reposition models to do actions for us, make another layered screen to help us jail our opponents further. Also allows us to crowd the board in ways that are going to make it harder for our opponent to actually play the game. As with 40k, it is really big on hindering mobility. Mobility is such a luxury for armies to have, and armies that don't have it have ways around it. But to stop enemies from doing what they want is such a big thing in 40k. And other types of swarm armies don't get this luxury of getting 10 model units into reserves for doing absolutely nothing unless they spend a CP. But for us, we have the luxury, so let's abuse it. But before we start talking about how to abuse other players with this detachment, let's talk about how we can't abuse this detachment. And what do I mean by that? Well, in this list, we can't compare Poxwalkers and these lighter infantry units to be able to sit there for long periods of time. We also can't sit here and expect them to perform well damage-wise, and we have to respect that their debuff from Nurgle's Gift isn't going to be enough. Just ignore flat out other army rules and how other armies can do damage to us. We have to think smart, hard, and not just throw Poxwalkers away because they're a screen. Each single time a Poxwalker dies, a unit I'm referring to, they need to die with purpose. Every time a unit dies, we need to expect a result in some way of being able to prepare to drop another unit to replace it. We need to have them perform an action for us to score points, clog or stop our opponents from scoring victory points, mainly the primary side of things. And the main one that we have to look at here is we have to make sure that it's going to aid us in our future turn to prevent anything to obscure us from winning the game. That's what's most important. So yeah, you, behind the screen, watching this video, why should you pick this detachment? And why would you even want to look into it? Well, if you're the type of person that can sit there and afford to lose units, but for the greater good, and strategically plan like a game of chess on where your units need to be at a certain time, this attachment's for you. If you're sick and tired of playing that list where you peek your head out, get shot in the face returned, and you take heaps of damage back, and you're like, oh my god, I just wasted a 350 point unit. Guys, chill out. In this attachment, it's only 65 points. How good's that? And the best part is, if it comes from reserve, it's free. So if you're looking to now not worry about points exchanges, worry about having to worry about, when you're going into a game, what unit needs to prepare itself to fight what, check this one out, guys. This one's going to be an absolute time saver. Alrighty, Outback Contagion spreaders, let's look at the list and see why you should run this list in your ShambleRot Detachment lists. So for my list, I'm running Typhus as my Warlord. I've got an Icon Bearer, a Lord of Virulence, a Malignant Plaguecaster, Noxious Blightbringer, a Tallyman, 20 Poxwalkers, 10 Poxwalkers, 2 Chaos Predator Destructors, Floated Bloat Drone, 2 Heavy Floated Blight Launcher Drones, and 3 Mythic Blight Haulers with a Chaos Rhino. So let's break this down further so you guys understand what this list is trying to do. So, in my personal opinion, Typhus is really good in this list because he gives -1 to hit in melee, so that's really good. That stacks with our Contagion as well, so you can make it -2. It doesn't accumulate, unfortunately, so you can't make it -2 to the data sheet, but if they somehow can increase them minuses, it does kind of negate that. So he's quite good for that. Pairing him up with a Noxious Blightbringer is really good as well, because what he does is for his personal enhancement, we'll talk about that in a second for Withering Bell Pipers, but his personal data sheet ability is in the battle shock step of your opponent's command phase, if an enemy unit is below its starting strength, so if it's lost 1 model or 1 wound, is within 9 of this model, the enemy unit must take a forced battle shock test, -1 if it's a psych unit. The reason why this guy's currently relevant is because a lot of units that are going to hurt us, mainly Grey Knights and T-Sons, are psychers, especially running the Space Marine list that John Lennon runs. He has the Librarian Psyker detachment that's going really good, which makes a lot of units key psyker, so we're going to battle shock a lot of those units. If you want to, how I've played this mostly is if you take the Contagion of -1 OC leadership and movement, that's going to stack. So now you're going to be subtracting 2 if you're in Contagion, which when you're within 9 inches, you usually are. So that's going to be -2, which takes it from a 6 to an 8. And then also, this is why I like this guy personally. He gets to add 1 to the move characteristic models that he's leading, and you get to reroll advances and charges so you can push up the board quicker. Pair this up with a 20-man and Typhus. This is going to do a lot of work and be quite board control and jailing for your opponent. Now, the reason why I've given him this enhancement, Withering Bone Pipes, is because while the bear is leading a Poxwalk unit in particular, you get to add 1 here to the objective control to all those models. So now you've jumped from OC1 to OC2, so you have a 40 OC brick. And each time that unit takes a battle shock test or a leadership test, add 1 to the test. So instead of being an 8, we are now a Poxwalker unit with +1 OC and a 7-up leadership. Even though we do die, it's great for smothering the board. If you can play with hidden and advance onto the board and or to make a charge, you're completely stuffing up their OC game. So that is why I personally like running Noxious Bellbringer or Blightbringer and the Typhus with the 20-man brick. Next, we've got the Lord of Virulence. Now, the Lord of Virulence has a very good particular job. With this detachment, if you need to get rerolls for shooting, he's usually the standalone guy. With the hidden mechanic, he can come from reserves, touch a light/dense terrain piece, get 15-inch hidden, but still be able to see out and target things and have visibility. Now, obviously, with hidden, you don't have visibility, so your ability is turned off. It's usually good if a unit has tried to shoot some Poxwalkers and you want to get rid of it. This is really good to be paired up with the heavy bloat drones because they really do need the rerolls because they usually aren't ignoring cover for most whatever they're shooting into. So now instead of hitting on 3s, we are now hitting on 4+. But now we're giving them full hit rerolls because they have the blast keyword. So that's something that I would definitely keep my eyes on. It's also really good for the Predator Destructor profile here as well, because these guys do have blast on their... I can't believe I don't have it equipped. Here we go, the Havoc Launcher. So you can reroll the Havoc Launchers, get chaff out the way if you need to. The Predator autocannon does a lot of work because now if you pick -1 save, it's AP2. When shooting, usually though I don't personally, so AP1 is usually how I see it with rapid fire too, because you're usually shooting things within 24 inches anyway. So that's something that I would be looking into if you haven't tried a lone Lord of Villarance character coming from reserves to buff up shooting. It's quite potent. Now we've got 2 Malignant Plaguecasters. Now one's going to be leading a unit and one isn't here. We're going to pair the Sorrow Siphon enhanced one with a 10-man unit inside of a Rhino and the other one not. The reason why is because we have a strat in Death Guard called the Plague Bus. Now the Plague Bus is something really good because if I break it down to you with data sheets, we have, I'll come down to the Rhino here so you guys can see. So the Rhino here moves 12, T9, 3+ save, 10 wounds total, leadership 6, and OC 2. With no invul, unfortunately. Now, the reason why this is such a good strat is because you can put 2 Malignant Plaguecasters in this. Now, what you've allowed yourself to be accessible to is you have a 12-inch moving Rhino with firing deck that can pick the 2 characters. You can choose to overcharge the Witchfire and have Flamers and have a 24-inch threat range Flamer. The reason why you pick the Flamers here is because let's bring up these stats so you guys can read it with me. So let's look at the Plague Wind Focused Witchfire. It's a 12-inch range flamer with D6 plus 3, hits automatically, which is so good in this edition at the moment. Strength 6 base, AP 2 base without -1 save playing effect, and it's flat D3 damage. Excuse me? And while this unit is leading a unit as well, each model that makes an attack that targets a unit which is afflicted gets sustain 1. All your Poxwalkers have got a sustain now. But the reason why we don't really care about that is because if you go to Sorrow Siphon here, and we're going to look at the Plaguecaster for a quick second, his enhancement reads, while a bearer is leading a Poxwalker, you get to add 1 to the damage characteristic of the bearer's Plague Wind weapon. And each time the bearer makes 1 or more attacks with a Plague Wind weapon, after the bearer's unit has resolved its attacks, roll a D3 bodyguard models for the unit to be destroyed. So we're going to roll a D3 at the end of your shooting, basically, and you're going to remove those models at the end of the shooting because they're destroyed. Now, why are we doing this? Well, now we've changed the stats to a D6 plus 3 Flamer, Strength 6, AP 2, D3 plus 1. So on average, you will roll 2 to 3 damage consistently with this enhancement, sacrificing some Poxwalkers. How good is that? I think that is completely good value. And every time you use this Flamer, specifically the character, in your shooting phase after this particular model shot, so it won't work in firing deck because the Rhino uses the weapon for itself. But when you hop out, for example, and use the Flamer, you're going to feeble an infantry unit that you've hit with the Plague Wind until the end of your opponent's next turn, and you get to subtract 2 from their movement. So we're manipulating that mobility more for them to struggle to get around our screening units or jailing our unit. Their units up, sorry. So these guys are really, really good. Do not sleep on this strat. The Plague Bus is something to behold. If you haven't seen it, I'll make a video breaking it down so you guys can understand in future videos. Put that in the comments if you'd like to see that. If not, I really won't really worry about it. But if you'd like to see how that works, put it in the comments. Or put it in Discord for that matter. We're running Italian Man for CP. We'll explain why the stratagem enhancements kind of require him in the list. The 20-man Poxwalker brick is mainly for Typhus and the Noxious Bellbringer. We're running Max Poxwalkers, Chaos Destructors, Heavy Bloat Drones, and 3 Mythics. The reason why I'm running 3 Mythic Blight Haulers here is because this list isn't really designed to kill, but we still want to let our opponent know, hey, we've got a bit of pressure here. If you come out, you're going to get +1 to hit and +1 to wound when I shoot you. And we've got Melters, so don't forget we can come from strategic reserves. So if you're playing against Knights, just put them in reserves and you'll kill a Knight, and you can board control everything because you're going to have Infiltrate absolutely everywhere. So playing against Knights, I wouldn't worry about it too much. We've also got some crazy attachments too, so we'll get into that as well. But there's the list, guys. So give it a try, see what you reckon. But if you stay through longer through this video, it's going to get even more crazy. Trust me. So that's right, guys. Let's get into the craziness. So the best combo for this attachment I've found is running Typhus with a 20-man brick of Poxwalkers with the enhancement with a Bone Piper. And the reason why this is so good is because you're going to be able to advance roll, clog up the board faster with -1 to hit in melee. So when you try to shoot these guys, you're going to be able to really force your opponent to get rid of hidden. And then once they get rid of hidden, you've got all this return fire from your tanks and things. Now, what's really good is you've also got mortal wounds that play effect into the Poxwalker's Walking Dead ability. So you get to bring back models once Typhus does mortal wounds and starts removing models for bringing back pretty much Poxwalkers into yours. So there's a revival mechanic there, basically. Not exactly correctly in terms of what 40k presents the revival mechanic to be, but for Death Guard, it pretty much is. Now, with the Witherburn Pipe, that's also giving OC2 for each Poxwalker. So now you're looking at 40 objective control walking around the board with rerolling advances for free with +1 to move. And you also get to add 1 to your leadership on top of this as well. So I'm finding that in this meta, there's a lot of battle shock lists out there. So getting that +1 to leadership is actually a really big payoff for this list, because we don't want to walk around with no access to stratagems with the combos that we're going in with. Pairing this up with the best Contagion out there for this list I found is -1 toughness, OC leadership, and movement characteristic. Now, why is this? Now, I've got a picture of Nurgle's gift here to reference this whenever you guys need to, because this is something that's our army rule. So this is how the Contagion works. Now, the reason why this Contagion in particular is really powerful is because we have movement manipulation, toughness manipulation. We've also got worsening our leadership for battle shocks, worsen OC for easy objective control, and this all plays a part in how the list wants to play. Now, the reason why the toughness manipulation is such a big thing for Death Guard is because it practically almost makes it a -1 to wound in some instances, because we're able to, instead of winning on 4s, we're now winning on 3s because we break that, that kind of toughness strength barrier. Also, manipulating movement for this list is really big too, because if you're trying to move through our models with fly, if you're trying to get into a closer charge distance, we're manipulating that. So the dice are pretty much in our favor a little bit. Worsening the leadership for battle shocks is big too, because now we're able to get our opponents battle shocked, stay battle shocked, turning off stratagems and OC for us to keep doing what we do best, which is clogging up the board and doing our primary and stopping theirs. Now, worsening the OCs is easier objective control as well. So when we're looking at trying to take objectives, they're -1 OC. So instead of being, a battle line 2 OC, so a 10-man brick, we're changing that 10-man brick OC, whatever the model count is, to now being 5 OC. So if we just put a unit of Poxwalkers on there, we out OC them by 5. They have to kill 5 models with Feel No Pains. We can also revive them if we get rid of models as well. So it's really hard to keep out OCing us in our favorable turns while everyone's battle shocked, because you have no enhancements, no way to increase it beyond that point, and there's also ways we can force battle shocks. Now let's get to that, because that is where the flavor really becomes good for ShambleRot. So let's go over our stratagems. So we've got Grip of the Walking Pox for 1 CP in the fight phase. We're going to roll a d6 for every Poxwalker that died from the enemy attack, and on a 6 on the dice, you do a mortal wound, and if those mortals kill anything in return, you get to return mortals in that unit that you've spent the CP on. So it's reviving them back. That's pretty good for 1 CP. We've got Smeared with Filth. You get to pick a unit that fought one of our Poxwalker units that died, and this is only happening in the fight phase, of course. And then they're afflicted for the rest of the game. So even if we don't kill them, they still have -1 OC, movement, and leadership, and toughness for the whole game for 1 CP. Really good in my personal opinion. If you put Death Shroud on your list, you're going to be able to counterattack a unit that they wanted to throw away to gain the objective back. Pretty good. Now, we've also got Gnawing Hunger. In your command phase, you select 1 unit. They get +1 move, strength, and attacks to their data sheets. Pairing this up with the Blightbringer is something that's really good as well, because now you're going to stack that because it's a cumulative. So now we've got 7 moving Poxwalkers. Incredible to think that they can move more than 5. They also get reroll advances as well. Now, Hidden Amongst the Dead's a good one. So this can only be used on a Poxwalker unit without an attached character. And in the movement phase, that unit gains Deep Strike. So this works really well with when you get those strategic reserves of 10 model Poxwalkers in reserves each battle round. You can just give them a CP and make them arrive anywhere on the battlefield to clog up the board. And it also lets you have more freedom and flexibility to go do missions and objectives as well. Jogger Horror is our next one. So for 1 CP, this one works for a Death Guard unit in particular. In the charge phase, you force a battle shock test on everything in engagement range for that unit at -1. You can use this to turn off in the fight phase strats as well, which is really good, and it can also stop your opponent from having a free chance of getting points on their primary, because now they have to roll out of battle shock at -1, because that's what we're going to take for the Contagion if you pick it. And then we've got Shambling Wall. Pick a Death Guard unit that was just targeted by a shooting attack. Until the end of the phase, everything that is targeted, if it successfully wounds, you don't make a save roll. Instead, you remove a Poxwalker in a unit and lose that number of models in the unit equal to the damage that that friendly model would get. So, for example, if you got a Mythic Blightholder getting shot and you wanted to blank it for whatever reason, you spend the CP. Say they did 8 damage, you just remove 8 models. And no damage goes onto the Mythic Blightholder for 1 CP. Now that's some serious value. Imagine pairing that up with Mortarion. Now he becomes extra tanky. You're blanking damage on Morty, a Primarch. Now here's some enhancements. We already talked about Witherbone Pipers further back in the slides. So let's go to the next one. Lord of the Walking Pox. It lets the bearer's unit come in from strategic reserves at any time as if it was the 3rd battle round. This is really good. However, it does have to be kind of thought about in a strategic way as well, not as much as attacking, because maybe you need to swarm the board, which is insane. Instead of having because basically for 1 CP, it's letting you bring units down from strategic reserves for free in the first battle round, which is quite good. We've gone over Sorrow Siphons. Let's go through Talisman of is it Burgeoning, I think? It gives Poxwalkers in that unit +1 toughness. This is really good because now we're changing Poxwalkers from T4 to T5, which can save a couple wounds in the long run if they're just trying to put mass shooting into us with, T4 bolters and things like that. Now they're winning on 5s. So it's not too bad. It's a niche enhancement. I prefer Withering Bone Pipes and Sorrow Siphon for how I like to play my lists, but any of these enhancements are for your picking. So if you find a good way to put this into your list, there you go, guys. Put it in. Now let's talk about the other detachment that we're using to make this even more crazy for our opponents to deal with. I chose to pick Paragons of Putrescence here for our 1DP detachment. The reason being is because we have a fair few characters leading our Poxwalkers that will allow them to have +3 Contagion range, which is going to spread the -1 movement, leadership, and OC debuff we want other models to have with the -1 toughness. So I think this is going to work really, really well. For enhancements, we've got Rejuvenating Swarm, so you can chuck on a non-terminator infantry unit -1 to wound, which is really good. You can also put on Host of the Hibernized Pox to give an additional Contagion as well for 40 points, I believe it is. That is going to go on infantry model only, and it's a once per battle that lasts for the whole game, so not too bad. The real reason I like this one is because we're going to pick Territorial Infection, which is going to give us +1 OC until the end of the turn on a character leading unit. We've also got Aggravated Spasm, which is going to increase the detection range by +6. We've also got Simultaneous Contamination, which is going to let us perform an action while shooting, which is going to be really good for our Malignant Plaguecaster. Because what's going to happen now is he's going to hop out of the Rhino if he needs to, get full wound reroll, because that's the Rhino's detachment ability. Its natural ability. When it shoots, it gets whatever we target that shot at full wound rerolls if they disembarked. So you can get full wound rerolls with a Plaguecaster. You're also going to get +1 damage because of the enhancement. And now we're able to perform an action to score points while doing big damage to clog up the board with our Poxwalkers as well. This detachment to me was a no-brainer. It helps all of our weak points that are going to make it harder for us to keep models at bay and keep control of the game. This here has just made it 10 times easier. So I think with this one here, Hypervirulent Strange is going to be really good for the Noxious Bellbringer and the Typhus model, leading the 20-man. That's going to be quite good. But yeah, that's the second attachment that I picked. So now let's get talking about roles and jobs. So what does this list want to do? Well, it mainly wants to hold the center and jail our opponent. The reason why it wants to do this is because it's really good at keeping our opponent's mobility really reduced. It's also good at keeping at a layered wave and defensive waves, I guess. So to go through the first one, it means you have to go through the second and third and so forth. So it's really time consuming to keep killing all those units, especially with having to being move blocked the entire time. We're also going to be returning fire as well. It's not like we're not going to be able to kill anything, but we need to keep in mind that this list isn't great at killing a lot of things. Now, we need to also, for roles, we need to have something to protect our expansion objective, which Poxwalkers aren't particularly great at this. So I would probably use the Lord of Vigilance to come down in that spot, or have a Terminator unit or a Mythic Blightholder, or just something with decent OC that isn't removable in one shot, or going to be able to not at least have the hidden mechanic in place. So if you do, as a last resort, need Poxwalkers to do it, but make sure you have a strategic reserve one to replace it. Now, we will also need to make sure that we're trading for board presence as well. We touched on this a little bit, but I'm just going to reiterate it for you. We want to make sure that if we're losing Poxwalkers, it's to gain board presence. We don't want to lose board presence. What I mean by that is we want to make sure that we have our opponent in either a stalemate in position of movement. They can't do primary next turn because they've had to come out to kill something for a secondary. We want to lose models on our terms, okay? And we also want to force awkward opponent decisions. So we want to make it like, damn, I could kill this Destructor, but I've got 20 Poxwalkers holding my expansion objective about to raid my home. That's the kind of mindset that you want to have. You want to be like, okay, if you go for the tank, sure, I'm going to lose a tank, but then I'm going to gain primary, be able to push your primary more. Or if I go for the Poxwalkers, I'm going to look at getting shot. And that's not great either. So you kind of want to put your opponent in that position, and you also want to make sure that they're always going to be losing something valuable to their game plan. So it's your job as your opponent, as a player, is to understand how that army functions, break it down to what they want to try and do, and use your list to come through and make sure that you can deny their kind of version of play while benefiting yours. That's what sets a competitive player above the rest. So if you can remember that, this list in particular and detachment for you is going to be great. So for all you players out there, I'm going to go through a little bit of a span here of how not to use this list. So we don't want to use this list to throw Poxwalkers forward with no intention. We don't want to start jamming up wrong targets. Now, it's really important to understand what target needs to be jammed and which one doesn't, or flooded, whatever term you want to use. It's really important to understand that, okay, I'm going to put Poxwalkers here to stop Victrix Guard from coming to the center, or I'm going to put Poxwalkers here so this guy can't get an angle on my return fire. It's really important to understand in that scenario what you need to do to kind of position yourself to have a competitive edge. And if you can figure out what target you need to stop mobility to play effect in, that is probably the biggest advice I can give to piloting this list. We also have to make sure we're not over-investing buffs into one particular unit. So I'm even on the edge of the Noxious Bellbringer and Typhus in the same list as a 20-man brick. I feel like it would be great to kind of spread that over multiple units. However, I've argued within myself that it is worth it because now you're offering a really good brick that can flip or turn an objective just by making one advance roll. We need to make sure that we're not overvaluing stratagems as well. So don't sit there and just make sure that you're saving CP for this stratagem because it sounds good or it sounds fancy. Make sure you're saving CP where you're going to use it on a strat that's going to change the game. And what I mean by that is don't use a CP to help reposition a false position in a game that you've already made. Make sure the CP is used to competitively win you a game in your favor on the offensive, not the defensive. If you need a CP for the defensive, you're not really using it in a way that's going to help you capitalize winning the game. Obviously, we have defensive stratagems, but that's just like a last resort if it's going to win you the game. So make sure you're always using stratagems where it's going to win you the game. And try to out killing something with this list is a no-go, okay? This list isn't designed to go and kill stuff. It's not getting caught up in the bloodlust. It's thinking smart, thinking how to flood the board, and making sure that your opponent can't get to where they need to go. You're controlling the traffic, not them. This is how this list is going to play. So if you're looking for a Purge the Foe style with ShambleRot, it's not going to happen. We cannot kill anything in this detachment. By all means, if you want to go make one with Contagion engines, go for it. I'd love to see how it goes. Definitely put that one in the comments or in the Discord. I'd love to actually hear about it. But from a competitive player like myself who ranks as the best Death Guard player in Australia at the end of 10th, I don't see it happening. So pretty much if you can follow this kind of tier list here with how not to use this list, you'll be piling it and getting wins in GTs in no time. And now let's rate this detachment out of 1 out of 10 for competitive play. I think this detachment as a whole has a potential to be an 8 out of 10, and that's my final rating. I think competitively right now it fits really well into 11th edition for swarming the board and battle shocks. It's very well rounded with some stratagems, enhancements, especially with Paragons and Putrescence. I think this has got very good legs to keep running in the current meta that we're playing. Now, thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for sticking around to the end of the video. Make sure you like and subscribe. I value every single one of you guys. Make sure you write in the comments what you think for yourselves, any lists that you might want to try, or better yet, you see it there. The Discord's finally up. Check the description down below and come join the Yucky Outback Nation's Discord, guys. Love to have a chat to you. Anyway, if you guys haven't already, have a lovely rest of your evening and stay yucky. See you guys in the next one.